Namaste to all the viewers. So today evening we shall be discussing about Arjuna's Vishada Yuga. So this is about the first chapter and the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and the dilemma that Arjuna has and how Sri Krishna approaches with him with solutions for that dilemma. So yes, Rishi, do you have any starting words? And then we can begin with.
Namaste to all of the audience, uh, Ninar and Dharma as well. Uh, just as Ninar said, we will be discussing specifically on Vishada and the response which Bhagwan gives. Ultimately, that's what Gita is mainly about. It's about dealing with a sort of delusion which came at a very specific instance, and Uh, in fact, that teaching itself can be transposed into any of the situations which we currently face. Uh, before going deep dive into it, maybe we should discuss about what's the significance of Gita and its position in the whole text as well, right, Neha?
Yes. So um, So we have the context of this whole conversation is right in the starting of the Bhagavad Gita, and in the Mahabharata, this comes in Bhishma Parva, basically from chapter 25 to 42 onwards, and we see how the description starts with first Duryodhana talking to Dhritarashtra, and no, Dhritarashtra talking to Sanjaya, and we have then Sri Krishna talking to Arjuna and how Arjuna finds himself placed between both the massive armies. Then he is taking view of all his surroundings. And right at that moment, this great archer, this great warrior who stands in his chariot, hearing all the shankhas uh, blaring and around him, for ready, prepared for war, and he is overcome with this strong emotion, strong feeling of wanting to back away, wanting to give up on his dharma in that moment. So he looks around him and he sees all his he sees his grandfather, his cousins, his teacher, his friends, and you know how his body begins to react as well. That is described in the Gita. So this is where the Bhagavad Gita begins, and this is where this dilemma is also approached and tackled by Bhagwan. So yeah, we can probably begin with the first slide. Rishi, any starting words?
Amazingly explained. As Ninar said before, it's a situation where Arjuna actually puts himself in the first place. At first, if we deep dive into the text itself, we get to see that it starts with Dhritarashtra, who kind of inquires about what's the situation at the battlefield, and Sanjaya, his friend and charioteer and advisor, starts narrating to him the whole situation. Going forward, we see that after blaring of the conch shells and so on, Arjuna himself says to Bhagavan that take me into a spot where I can actually gauge the opposing army. And that's where Bhagavan takes the chariot and rightly puts it in such a position where Arjuna at the back he has his own army, the Pandava army, and opposite of him is the larger Kaurava army. But in that, at first glance, he doesn't look at the enemies, so called. In fact, he gets to see his relatives, all of the relatives. Some of them were mm, some of them were grandfathers, teachers, uncles, cousins. Uh, some were even uh, what should I say, nephews. All of them he was
Yes.
watching. Also, mm, couple of generals and so on who he had met, who he had interacted with. This situation actually created a lot of problems. The whole enthusiasm that he had beforehand, it just vanished away. And now we will get to see what actually happens. Uh, I guess we should move next, I guess. Nina, would you take it up?
Yes. So in this scene, we see an uncomfortable truth that is uh, lied unsaid in this whole situation and backdrop. It is about how we express our principles, our ethics, and our values. But the underlying reason for that, for the expression of these principles, values, and ethics, they turn out to be just simple fear. Fear, you can say, dressed up in noble words. That is what is the story of Vishada, in Arjuna's Vishada in this instance. It doesn't mean just sadness or dejection. It is about paralysis of action, fear of action, uh, fear that you cannot move forward with the action you were already ordained to do, in a sense. So, several verses in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita describe physically and emotionally how Arjuna reacts to this dejection overcoming. For example, we know of the how the bow, the Gandiva, slips from his hand, and then his skin starts burning intensively. He has intensive goosebumps. You can say, in the negative sense, that he is fearful of taking up his uh, his duty. And finally, he makes an appeal to Bhagwan that I am not able to stand firmly at all. My mind seems to be wavering, and I want to back out from what was my duty, what till now I had considered my duty. From this point on, he begins his kind of philosophization, the philosophization behind his fear, um, to justify him backing out. Yes. So, Rishi, any points on this?
Of course. So he comes up with many justifications for the situation that he is in right now. Looking at all of the relatives and the consequences which he will be facing by enacting uh, the so-called objective which he had in his mind before coming into this situation, all of that vanished away. And because of the dire situation which Nina expressed about Arjuna, he then comes up with various arguments. Uh, Primarily, we see that he says basically that after all, we know killing is adharma, himsa is adharma, and not just that, killing, he is not going to kill any random guy, but he is going to kill especially teachers, his elders, kith and kin, and that is far more greater adharma. He gives many, he actually alludes to many uh, mm, what should I say, many texts. Uh, Excuse me. He actually alludes to many of the texts which we as Hindus know, Vedas and so on. And he's basically alluding to many of the mantras. Uh, Ma Himsa Sarva Bhutanam, such verses he is quoting. Also, later on, then he says that going forward, killing for the sake of kingdom, which is out of an activity born of greed, it makes it much more worse. Uh, the references are being given over here on the slides. Audience can check them out. These are the two primary arguments he gives. First is himsa is bad. Himsa, especially against his relatives, are far more worse. And then, because of the greed, uh, that also for a kingdom, uh, that makes it much more worse. Then he talks about war in itself is bad. War creates suffering, mass suffering. Uh, it engages in violence, and anything which is gained from it is drenched in blood. Therefore, it should be forsaken. He's actually trying to demonstrate that the activity itself should be abandoned altogether, let alone thinking about the consequences or the actions which would be taken in it. He is saying that the whole damn effort should be discarded altogether. Leonard, any more points?
On the surface of it, his entire like moralizing of his arguments of giving up action also, it seems all quite nice. He's talking about being he's talking about giving up everything and becoming a sadhu. So he wouldn't have to lift arms against his own people. And on the face of it, it sounds very nice. He talks about not wanting people to be dead. That is also, it seems like a noble cause. He talks about how if you were to continue with a war, if the elders were dying, if the society would collapse, if a woman or the social system were to be dishonored, then ultimately all should be living in hell, literal or metaphorical, however you take it. And on the face of it, he seems to think about the second order consequences a lot, and he is basing his arguments on the worry of consequences, not about the action on its own. Yes, so that is basically how he uh, objects to his own duty, what was already ordained of him. We can move on to the next slide. From this point on, we begin to see more of a dialogue, starting with Sri Krishna giving him a response as to how he perceives Arjuna's reaction and his words. So he says he uh, he is not directly consoling him even. He straight away calls him out, and he says that the men you are who you are grieving for, who you think sparing would actually be dharmic, they are not worth grieving for, and sparing them would be adharmic. He talks of how the learned or the wise men, they would not grieve for the departed and those who would depart, those who have not departed. For them, there is no difference between the dead and the undead. This uh, action paralysis, or you can say Arjuna wanting to give up his own dharma or question his own dharma and instead follow para dharma, that is seen as cowardice in a way. And there are many ways of looking at this, but in a sense, it is also true because uh, he he is moralizing his fear, his own cowardice, and finding an argument after that, after to basically to satisfy his fear, to be a slave to it. If you were committed to your duty, you would not be trying to satisfy your fear and would uh, be committed to the duty just normally. So Rishi, Do you have any points on this?
Yeah. So on this issue, I think you have touched on the initial response from Bhagwan, right? So Bhagwan, instead of
Yes.
consoling him, is actually repudiating him. He is not at all in the mood. In fact, he thinks of it as a charade, I guess, that in such a crucial portion, he is getting into such a temper tantrum. In fact, for the audience sake, I must reveal this. Even an inner will be able to say much more on this. So, before Gita, the situation in which Gita is being delivered, before that, there were long series of arguments, debates, communications, and so on between the two Kauravas and Pandavas. In all those instances, Arjuna actually had supported the idea of war, a just war, especially, and he was all totally prepared for going into this action. After all of this pronouncement, when this situation happens, if we see that in if we see this instance as far as that context is concerned, we'll actually appreciate why did Bhagwan respond in such a manner. Because without understanding the context, many people cannot even interpret Bhagwan well enough. They might think that why is he getting so uh, mean? I guess that would be the word appropriate here. So why is he getting so mean towards Arjuna? Arjuna is saying such correct things, but in fact, it's not true. So leaving that aside, now if we go further, Bhagwan actually, what Nina explained right before me, Bhagwan counters this escapism, and he also, I shouldn't, I guess, now refer to the verse. It's Bhagavad Gita 2.2, quote, O Arjuna, in this perilous place, from where has come to you this impurity, entertained by unintelligent persons, which does not lead to heaven and which brings infamy? Uh, so this verse actually refers to a principle which is known to anyone practicing Sanatana Dharma, that what is Dharma, one of the definitions also that is given is that Dharma is that action which actually leads you to obtain fame when while living and swarga after death. So basically, Bhagwan is pointing it out that what you are doing right now is not even dharma. Even though he was trying to appear very dharmic by those arguments, like himsa is bad and so on and so forth. But in fact, Bhagwan rightly points out that it was not aligned with dharma at all. So, what was the reason that Arjuna was speaking as such? Bhagwan then correctly uh, diagnoses the problem and says it's because of the weakness of the heart. The famous shloka, as many have known, 2.3, Klaibyam mas magamah partha naitattayopapadyate kshudram hridaya daurbalyam taktotishta parantapa. The kshudram hridayam, the weakness of heart, that is the main cause for all this justification and action paralysis, and this disdain for doing something which is right at that moment. Uh, Niner, do you have any points?
Yes. So from this also, Sri Krishna begins analyzing him further on this same point of action paralysis and him having a weakness of heart. So that weakness of heart, you can also analyze the specific words in a way. He says weakness of heart, not weakness of mind or weakness of body. Heart, because it comes from a place of emotion, a place which is more, you can say, susceptible to the to attachment in general. For example, when he talked about being worried about having to kill his grandfather, his teacher, his own family, cousins, Sri Krishna points out that he is attached to the idea that he is that the victory he was expecting earlier to be easy is not that easy, and he's attached to that. He's attached to the very people who he might want to kill. He is not, but he is shying away from the attachment he should have had for his own duty. That kind of attachment should have stayed, but the right kind of attachment, the wrong kind of attachment, stayed instead. He also talks about, I think it is in the from chapter one or maybe seventh, no, 11th shloka or something. He talks about how this kind of a reaction, it starts from when you dwell on an object. You might think about something, maybe a person, maybe an outcome, or maybe a specific object even. And from that thinking about it, you get an attachment that you want that, and this you get a possessive outlook towards it. That you want to have it, or you have that thing as yours. This the possessive outlook creates desire or the craving, and in turn, when you have that craving or that desire, you also have the fear in mind that you might lose something, that you might lose your family, the possessions or the attachments you have, you might lose them. From that position, from that fear, from that craving, there comes anger, and finally, this anger, this anger is more like a cloud in front of your eyes. It does not allow you to see properly. Everything becomes distorted, and your whole mindset, it becomes one of delusion. This delusion, you can probably move to the next slide. I think it's written in that. Yeah, this no, no, last slide only. Yeah, yeah. It's, yes, yes, this one. So this delusion, it's like a cloud in front of your eyes. And since there is a cloud in front of your eyes, you cannot see in the past, you cannot see far in the future. You might see a consequence one step down or two steps down, but not much further. And from that kind of delusion, you get a failure of memory. You forget what actually matters, what mattered maybe say years ago, what will matter years later. You forget what training you were, how you were trained, what you were trained for, what your duty was 10 years back, what your duty will be in the future, and you forget your very nature. And from this memory failure, you reach this state of Vishada, where you are unclear about your own morals, your own the actions you want to commit to, and you decide to, in the spur of the moment, you decide to want to give up your dharma. So there is yes, Rishi, would you have any other points on this? I can continue after that.
Yeah, yeah. So Niner explained it beautifully, say that the whole issue starts with attachment and the consequent results that happens because of the delusion that's crept in because of that attachment. Another side of this of these set of arguments which Arjuna gave while he was in Vishada was that all of the arguments prima facie were approaching from an issue also explained by Niner beforehand, from a perspective of profit and loss. Like even uh, when he's engaging in his duties uh, through any means, mind, body, speech, etc., uh, it's all it's always about the results. He was always thinking about what will the result of it, and therefore should I be doing that action or not, regardless of regardless of the validity of that action. And this is something which is born from egoism, from this whole notion that I'm the doer and I'm the enjoyer of the fruits. Excessively motivated by results and consequences of those actions, Arjuna tried to um, examine his options on the basis of what appeared to bring greater benefit or most pleasurable outcome, and not on the basis of what truly constitutes righteousness or dharma. Because of this, uh, between he had two choices. So between him killing his own kith and kin uh, for an actual uh, an actual moral issue, or the other choice was to stand alone at the end and giving up on the whole action, aka the war. He chose the latter because he thought if he does the latter, he will be ensuring survival of the family and friends, and he would be able to enjoy rest of his life with them. So, because of that cost and what should I say, profit and loss mechanism, that was this option he chose, and to couch that, he used the language of dharma. Although deep down, all of his arguments were basically based on desires and selfishness, in fact. And also the another point which is very crucial indeed. In fact, we know in the second chapter itself, I think after 2.3, Arjuna himself admits the fact that also in first chapter he does that Kauravas were in the side of Adharma. They were actually the evil. They were not good people. And that as a Kshatriya at that moment, he had a duty to vanquish the evil. But yet he chose and he ignored his duty because of that cost benefit analysis that he did at that time. So, because of that attachment, what Nainer explained created that whole cycle of confusion, anger, and literally delusion at the end of the day, and all sorts of uh, problematic issues that came in for him, physical as well as mental. And now he's actually doing something which is adharma. He's relinquishing his duties because of that whole attachment, because of that whole profit and loss perspective that he has by now. In that case, Arjuna faced a dharma sankata where he had to choose whether or not he would be performing swadharma or he would be going into paradharma, aka living the life of a kshatriya and surviving by begging and so on and so forth. He chose the life of paradharma because of attachment to kith and kin, and because he had beforehand couched the whole argument that he had in the language of dharma. So these two problematic issues created the whole problem of Vishada for Arjuna. I think, Dinner, we can proceed from here on, right?
Yes. I only have one more thing to say. So, uh, on the next, you can go to the next slide. In that, so we see how Sri Krishna calls out the pretty weakness of heart. The reason, once more, let me repeat that the why he calls it the pretty weakness of the heart specifically. is because heart is where emotion resides, whereas the mind is where the intellect resides. His intellect is not being used, while the emotion, which drive his sense of attachment, his ego, that sense of I, that sense of mind, Mahakar, that has taken over. That is where he brings up his teacher, he brings up his grandfather, he brings up his, you can say, conscious that he will go to hell or he will be responsible for the death of his family. And at that point, it becomes less about the dharma or the principle, and it becomes about him. Everything revolves around him. It revolves around his conscious, around his parents, his grandparents, his teacher, his cousins, and so on. Ironically, that is the opposite of the compassion and selflessness he should be showing. Selflessness would be to not make everything his and to actually ask the right questions. What would actually stop, say, Duryodhana's tyranny? That would not require him to be suddenly compassionate and forgive him and abandon the battlefield. That would require him to fight and prove that he is wrong on the battlefield. Instead, he was powering down in his chariot and asking, how can I feel validated about this guilt? How can I escape the temporary terrible choice? Even though in the long run, it is actually the good thing to do. So, in essence, he was trying to uh, hide his fear or his paralysis behind these, so you can say, nice sounding ethics, nice principles, and so on. It sounded very noble, but Sri Krishna, as he was not buying it. Therefore, he gives us a two-pronged solution. He gives us a solution after this. So, the yeah, Rishi, would you have anything else to say about this?
Yeah, so the two-pronged solution which Bhagwan gives is found in his response. So the first kind of response that he addresses is the issue of uh, the problem which Arjuna was facing. I will be killing my relatives uh, by waging this war. So he addressed this issue by revealing the uh, what is colloquially called as Jnana Yoga, or the knowledge of immortality of self. He talks about how the self, which is what we call as the I, so that self can never be harmed at all by any means necessary. Uh, there are many slokas in that regard, as we know. Nainam chindante shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, and so on and so forth. That shloka, and there are others. This one does not kill, nor is it killed. 2.19. Another one would be great. It cannot be cut, it cannot be burnt, cannot be moistened, and surely cannot be dried up. It is eternal, omnipresent, stationary, unmoving, and changeless. Gita, second chapter, 24th shloka. There are many such slokas which he gives, and these statements actually provide arguments to completely prove the point that what he will be doing as action, so-called killing, he won't be actually killing people at all. They are eternal selves and they are already immortal. That was the first problem that he dealt with. And in this regard, I think I must say some more points on this. So, Basically, this whole issue of Dharma Sankat, which Arjuna was facing, was caused by uh, what is known as Arishad Vargas, or the six passions that one is hit with: Kama, Krodha, Mada, Moha, Matsarya, and so on and so forth, which has its root in avidya or ignorance. But ignorance of what exactly? It's the ignorance of reality, actual truth. If we do not know the actual truth, we actually make up things. Uh, and by making up things, we fall into delusion, and then all of the Arishad Vargas harm us. That was the case with Arjuna as well. When we are relieved from this uh, ignorance and we encounter the reality that we are not limited by the body mind complex, but instead we are self Atma, which is immortal and infinite, we actually have a new dimension open to us. Because of this ignorance, one had developed identification with the body mind complex, on the other hand. And there rises ahankara, the I-ness, and mamakara, the notion that this is mine, this is not mine, as Nainer had explained beforehand. The ahankara and mamakara towards his relatives that Arjuna had felt, that ultimately led to Vishada. So the first solution which Bhagwan gave was to cut at the root cause of that very problem, which I had uh, said before. By destroying this avidya alone and by revealing the reality of self, which is immortal, which can neither be killed nor is it a killer, the point which Arjuna was making at once gets demolished, and he starts to realize the immortality. Now he will be no longer deluded by false attachments to the physical identities of the kith and kin, which had prevented him from performing his Kshatriya Swadharma. Thus, Arjuna's Kshatriya Swadharma, to the knowledge of the self, Bhagwan actually locates and anchors one's Swadharma in the larger context over here, that is the Dharma Yuddha, which he is waging right now. This is the first approach which Bhagwan takes in. Uh, I think the next approach will be explained to us by Nainer. Any points you have, Bhai?
Yes, you can move on to the next slide. As Rishi spoke, the first pronged approach was about addressing the actual philosophical root of what Arjuna was avoiding. That souls do not die. Uh, that merely by killing, or he is not the doer in essence, right? So that is why he is not to fear about making action, and he is not to have an attachment to who is the killer, um, or him as a killer itself, because he is not the killer. uh, yeah, and after that, he also
Okay, so let me add something here. So basically,
yes,
the dilemma that has been that is arisen to Arjuna. So first, as Rishi shared, that the main cause that why he is accepting paradharma instead of his own that is his instead of his own swadharma, that because of his deep desire, and also he's of thinking the consequences which are in no way in his hands. Like also Sri Krishna further says that whatever you do, like if you fight the war or if you don't fight the war, it doesn't matter, it will happen, it has to happen. So now as you said, like he's having this like trembling, like should he kill or not? But the thing here is that people he's killing, as again discussed earlier, like the Kauravas were like not dharmics obviously, and by not dharmic then adharmics. Like they were kind of terrorizing. So that's why all this war and all. So here again, like as our Dharma Shastra says, like those who do it, like those who do all this. So the only favor you can do upon them, like as you say, kripa. So by killing or by unaliving them is the favor you doing to them. Like by only and only unaliving them, you are doing kripa on them that after this whole fashad is over, they will again they will again like, take a next birth and cleanse up all these adharmic karmas of their in the next birth. So you are giving them that choice. Okay, now you can move on.
Yeah. So, and another part of the answer which Sri Krishna gives is about not just about how souls do not die and that he is not the doer and so on. Also thinking about the individual actions leading up, both of the Kauravas and Pandavas. Uh, he says specifically to him that he's a Kshatriya, that it is his nature, his all his training of his life has been for this, that he was born to take part in this war and to deliver to Dharma. Say, like for every profession, every kind of person, they have their own Dharma. And for a warrior to kill, that is a natural part of his Dharma. Say a hunter would naturally have to kill an animal to get the products from it. It does not he does not cover from it with the excuse that it is violent or so. So that duty that remains, that duty dharma or his swadharma of a kshatriya, it is delineated as protection of the innocent. And here Duryodhana is the furthest from innocent. He is the wrong person here. Arjuna must so rightfully uphold his dharma and implement the protection of the innocent according to the Kshatriya dharma. And it is also not like it is some random war happening for no reason at all. Duryodhana has seized the kingdom after many talks, after many attempts at peace, uh, and he had not succumbed to any other mode. It had at the last, as the last option, it had come to war. So flying away at that moment, it would neither end the war. The others would still fight the war, but you will alone be gone from it. Will the regret or the conscious truly go away from you? Not really. And by not fighting, if you think that you can show ahimsa or kind of virtue signal, it does not mean that the tyranny of Duryodhana will end. He will continue finding his new victims. So that's why this is not aggression or violence. This is upholding the justice that his dharma requires him to do. He also talks about how what he there. I think in the third response, he also talks about how what people will say about Arjuna. They would not think that he's compassionate in their intelligence, right? They would not think he's compassionate for abandoning a war. They would think that he's a coward, having talked big and still ran away. There will be his reputation, his honor would not be respected. And it is also said, like for a warrior, for a great archer like him, dishonor is obviously worse than death itself. So it is always better to die in the field rather than just cower and walk away in shame. Yes. So Rishi or Dharma, do you have any points on this?
So I will just elaborate on your point, Niner. Amazing point. The third response, and actually, this is something rarely talked about in many of the uh, conceptions which people hold on to. Even the second one, which you explained about, Niner, that too even is not talked much. The immortality of self, which I was speaking of, that is known to many people. But that second and the third, I think uh, we should keep that in our mind at least. Whenever from next time we will be talking about Gita. So I will just add on to the third point, what Nina said. So in this, we can maybe describe it as a sakama, or should I say, uh, something that is worth desiring for. So sakama oriented solution to this action paralysis which Arjuna was facing, Bhagwan gives that as well. As Nina talked about, that getting away from this whole situation outright by fleeing from it will bring dishonor to his name. Especially his main enemies over there, the Karna and so on, they will mock him. Uh, and this will go and spread far uh, beyond the territory which Arjuna had in his mind. It will be uh, far more sinister because this will be etched in history, and for futures, for the future coming, Arjuna will be seen as a symbol of cowardice. These are the points which Bhagavan actually refers to when he says, "quote It's it's chapter 2, verse 31. Even considering your own duty, you should not waver, since there is nothing else better for a Kshatriya than a righteous battle." So here Bhagwan actually addresses this profit and loss issue. So basically, what uh, Arjuna was trying to do, he was looking at the result, and based on that, he was taking decisions of actions. Now, Bhagwan is saying that action itself, you should be judging first and foremost. Am I doing the right action or not? If I'm doing what is right, regardless of what results may come afterwards, due to that right action, that will be far more desirable, or far more profit. What should I say? Not profit, I guess. Far more better solution. In
Right.
fact,
Yes. It is.
far more. Uh, let's just say far more. Uh,
Right. Yes. Right. In a way.
uh, I guess right. Yes, but I should say. Uh, okay, Nina, you can maybe help me on this. So. Uh, what should I what should I describe it as? So basically, Bhagwan is trying to explain that the action itself is so much better, regardless of the result it might produce. You should be going forward. If you have that issue of cost benefit analysis, you should be taking the benefit of that action itself, uh, because that is far more profitable. I guess that that kind of puts my view into perspective. Sorry, audience,
Yes.
mm, it's a bit
In the
hard to
so
explain this.
yes. Yes. So once more we'll go about this two prongs of the response of Bhagwan, right? So the main first point that it boils down to is that he must act to his own dharma, on his own swadharma, not his paradharma. And doing so for any person, and even most importantly for a Kshatriya, doing so is much better, much better, and gives you heaven. according to the exact shloka, I believe. Even if it feels difficult, it feels unpleasant, but remaining steady in your own dharma is 1,000 times better than taking up someone else's dharma. Because your dharma, as is delineated by your who you are, where you were born, how you were raised, what you have learned, what the situation requires, what the context requires, that has always remained steady. It has always required the same kind of expectations from you. When you suddenly try to shy away from that, you are trying to, um, in a sense, that delusion is catching up to you. You are um, being clouded about what the true expectations about on your own sadharma were. And after this comes second and the most important, you can say the second response and the most important response, without which the first one is will not work. That is acting without the attachment to the outcome. So, I think in the next slide or so, they call it equanimity or samatvam. So whether he succeeds in the war, whether he fails in the war, whether uh, everybody dies or nobody dies, isn't that at the end irrelevant? Because what others say, um, what the story will be, whether he tried to uphold justice or not. Well, wouldn't it be right if he even tried, despite his defeat? Whether he gets blamed for the death of many, but didn't he still stand up for what was right? And so, if he believes it is right, he must stay steady and he must stand for it throughout, as he always did, and as he did in the preparation for the war as well. So, it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about winning the war at all. He does have to give his best in the war, but he also needs to not be attached to the result in such a manner that the result creates a fear in him. The result um, interferes with his attachment so much it causes the delusions we spoke of earlier. So yeah, um, that was the two-pronged response of Bhagwan on the topic. Rishi or Dharma, if you have any words on this.
Yeah, so I will be speaking on this issue of karma yoga. I guess that's what you were referring to, right? The solution, which
Yes,
Bhagwan
yes. Even
points
I
out
was not able to express
later on.
properly.
Uh, no issues. So one crucial point you actually explained. So the equanimity issue. That's an important part of this whole teaching. So let's just break it down. Mm. Beforehand, we learned how Bhagwan taught the teaching of immortality of the self. Now, remembering that very concept, one should realize that without anchoring oneself into that knowledge of immortality, but if one starts working from a standpoint of transactional world, accepting everything is transient in nature, how is it possible for that person not to grieve over something? In fact, Arjuna was grieving because of that very standpoint and that very thinking which came from that standpoint. So, keeping in mind that teaching of Brahma Vidya or Jnana Yoga, the immortality of self, Bhagwan taught Arjuna how to engage in action from the standpoint of Vyavahara, transaction, without being concerned for the consequences of his actions that may happen. This obsession with consequences of actions actually led him to mistake his swadharma as adharma and paradharma as swadharma, resulting in that action paralysis situation. So, in this teaching, of Karma Yoga, as we see upon the slide, Bhagwan mm, breaks down into four portions. So the solution, first of all, starts with detached action, which has to be dharmic and not adharmic at all. So the references have been given over here. Uh, Let me just quote one of them. नेहाभिक्रमनाशोऽस्ति प्रत्यवायो न विद्यते स्वल्पमप्यस्य धर्मस्य त्रायते महतो भयात्. So, for the benefit of audience, I will be quoting a commentary on it, a very great commentary, in fact. Quote, moreover, in the path to liberation, that is, through Karma Yoga, there is no waste of an effort in beginning, unlike as in agriculture, etc. The meaning is that the result of any attempt in the case of Karma Yoga is not uncertain. Besides, unlike as in medical care, nor uh, neither there is any occurrence of pain or suffering. But even if little, swalpamapi, little of this dharma is conducted in the form of Karma Yoga, this actually saves one from great fear, mahato bhayat, of this mundane existence, which is characterized by death, destruction, suffering, birth, etc. And the next reference which is given is towards a point which I think all of us should remember, that uh, yash shastra vidhim utsrijya karya karya vyavasthito. And the shloka goes on basically saying that what is to be done and what is not to be done, that is to be determined by shastras, and one should be following that. That's the first prescription which Bhagavan gives to Arjuna, that performing detached from the results of any action, but that action should be dharmika and not adharmika at all. Another one which he gives, it has the same beginning, that being detached from the results, but practicing your own dharma over here. So uh, the references too are given. Now, swadharma means the dharma which is ordained for oneself. Um, Now, this is explained through many points, like Nina did beforehand. One is born into, one is raised as one. So you are prepared after, as an adult, you are prepared by then to follow certain set of actions, and in that there are do's and don'ts. So that becomes your swadharma. Now one must be practicing those, and if one does not do that, what's the result? Bhagwan explains to us, in fact. So, one quotation which I will be giving, uh, that's from chapter 3, verse 35. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushthitat swadharme nidhanam shreyah paradharmo bhayavaha. It's a very, very famous shloka, and I think audience will love this. Quote, one's own duty, one's own, actually, that is swadharma. One's swadharma, though defective it might fail, is superior to someone else's duty well performed. Death is better while engaged in one's own duty. Another's duty is fraught with fear. End quote. So these are the first two teachings that Bhagwan gives. I think Nina can speak on the latter two as well. Uh, he has great points over it. Over to you, Nina.
On the point of uh, doing one's own duty over someone else's duty, I would like to bring the example of uh, about how even if it is defective to stand your ground and continue doing the duty you are ordained to. The best example I can think of is Kumbhakarna. How even though he stood against with the morals of what Ravana had done, he had to succumb to his duty and he had to fight as a warrior on his brother's side. That is where you can see the same thing kind of playing out. Or even there is example of warriors on the side of the Kauravas as well, who, albeit knowing that they are in the wrong, they have to stand uh, according to the ground that they took many times, and they cannot change their side in the last minute and so on. So yes, so that was that. Uh, Rishi, on which specific point did you want me to continue?
Yeah, so I wanted you to actually enumerate on the equanimity, samatvam, and the self-restraint portions.
Okay, um, so samatvam is basically about the detachment from the results of your or the outcome of your actions. I think in verse 248, I think it is given. Yeah, here it is. It is in that. Yeah. So it means that whether the outcome, whether it is success, he wins the war, or he fails, that is, he loses the war, and many people are killed, or many are not killed at all. He should not judge whether the action was right based on this outcome. The action in this instance is about whether he stood for dharma or not about the result or as Rishi was talking about earlier, the profit loss account, or whether he has killed enough, so many people or so few people, and whether it is on that basis a good or a bad war. The right way to assess your action is not on outcomes, then it is on whether it is just, and whether it, even if it involves a large number of people dying, if it is just, it is a just cause, and that makes it dharmic alone. So it is also not about being apathetic to your actions. It is, but you must care about how well you do it. Like you should not be apathetic to the performance of the war, and you should try to hard to win it. But the results should be not. You should not have an attachment to the results, because, as we have delineated earlier, attachment itself brings about that kind of delusion in the end. And that delusion is this entire Vishada we witness now in Arjuna. So I could think of many examples as well where um, someone might, with the weakness of heart, someone might feel bad about something. Say, a doctor going into a surgery, he might feel a bit overwhelmed by seeing all the blood or something, and he might not want to cut up the patient to actually cure him, but it is in his duty to actually do it through, no matter what his heart feels, because that's his job. You cannot back away from it in the last minute and so on, right? That is essentially samatva. That is the whole equanimity that Sri Krishna speaks of. Yes, Rishi. Did we have any other topic to continue?
I think you have explained it, the third point, extensively. Do we need to go on over the self-restraint one, the fourth point?
So the self-restraint one also is quite interesting. We can say a few things about this. Essentially, the reference to self-restraint here is about indriya nigraha. So about the controlling of your senses. Why it is referenced here is also because attachment, in a sense, so when you feel attached to something, there is a medium of attachment as well. So say you have a dog, the reason you might feel attached to it might be its appearance or the sound of it. The appearance, um, if you were blind, you would not have see the appearance. If you were, um, if you could not hear, you would not know how it barks. You would not like the bark. You would be absolutely indifferent. You would have self restraint. So in that same manner, without being blind, without being deaf or anything, you must have that kind of self control, the self restraint that enables you to, you can say, be indifferent to a kind of attachment. So yeah, that is what I think comes from the point of self restraint. Do you have any thoughts on that, Rishi?
Amazing, amazing. So these four kinds of teaching, I mean, these are so encompassing, uh, addressing every single issue of our life is possible by following these four solutions which Bhagwan gives. Gita, in fact, is many commentators in history have talked about it that Gita, even though it appeared in a very specific context of war, it is addressing such universal issues. It could be posed over any problems, in fact, because there are many places where we fall in this sort of conundrum or dharma sankat. And it is also because of attachment and uh, attachment to the very situation that we are in or to the results that we may incur because of what we might do at that point. All of them are solved by following these four uh, principal teachings of Bhagavan. These work then, these shall work even now. If these are not kept in mind, I don't think many of the problems that we face now can be solved at all. Even then, mm, uh, Arjuna faced many situations where he gets into problems, but he is reminded again and again of these teachings. And lo and behold, we know the result of the history at that time. Now, I think, Ninar, we
Yes.
are at the end of the presentation, right?
Yes, yes. Maybe do we have any point on the first point? I think we did not elaborate much on it about how to have the viveka to know what is a dharmic action and what is a dharmic action. Perhaps we can say a few things about that.
Yeah, so on this issue, Bhagwan is very clear, right? So, Bhagwan refers to that 1624, that the commands of the Shastras to be are to be referred to whenever thinking of uh, what is to be conducted and what is not to be conducted at any given point. Uh, this viveka especially develops from karma yoga because by engaging in self-restraint and so on, we actually develop our mind to be very analytical and to be very cautious. Also, these are first principles. So when we start having these, automatically we have this knowledge too as well that okay, I know that the situation which I'm in right now, what is to be done and what is not to be done. It's very easy because when you start having situations and when you start thinking from a perspective where you are non-attached to both the results or the surroundings, you can actually think uh, far brilliantly, uh, which you would have not if the other case, if it was the other case. So, due to this non-attachment, then it becomes very easier for you to have that vivek, that discernment that okay, this is right, this is wrong, and this must be done, regardless of whatever may be the results that may incur. Cause at the end of the day, those results are not in our control at all. It is in the control of outer forces. Uh, those are also deeper concepts which Bhagwan explains later on in Bhagavad Gita. We shall not deep dive into that. But for today's session, in this regard, the viveka which Niner was referring to, this can only be developed through the practice of karma yoga, and especially of non-attachment and equanimity of mind. And I guess, Niner, any points you have for the latter prescriptions which are
Yeah,
given
so
on the
we can
slide?
move on to the summary. We can move on to the summary of what we have all discussed today. So this was essentially a presentation about Vishada, Arjuna's Vishada, and how Sri Krishna approached it and answered it appropriately on various levels, with various responses as well. Uh, but this is not just about Arjuna or not just about Sri Krishna giving an eloquent response. It is also about the crises uh, every person has in their life, the kind of situations which we face from which we want to shy away from with our own moral justifications, and we kind of try to stay in that state of action paralysis. The excuses are largely the same in those situations, that I am being very compassionate by sparing and not engaging in the war. I am uh, it would complicate things down the road, or it would you can say that you pretend to be more thoughtful in a way about your actions and think about consequences so much it overwhelms you. uh, yeah, so that is there. We learn about through the discussion we have learned about how Bhagwan responds to his arguments, about his excuses in a way we can call them, about the nature of the self, how the how it expresses this kind of action paralysis and how to overcome it, the nature of dharma, specifically his kshatriya dharma, and how his inaction, by foregoing his own dharma, he is actually contributing to the greater harm of his people and to overall, you can say, the people. Yeah, and we see the solutions, as in how to. Yeah, Rishi, you can continue with the last point on the solutions. You can summarize those.
Yeah, so in conclusion, uh, these are the points I think we should keep in our mind. So, because of what he saw at that time, an attachment, he fell into delusion and then he started making excuses. Bhagwan countered those by telling him that uh, the self that he is immortal and it's not the doer. And the second point being the Swadharma which he has is actually the right path to follow, regardless of what may be the results coming off of it. The greater good is in following Dharma itself rather than hankering about some results that one may incur. Now, after that, Bhagwan also tells us how to actually lead our life and not be following into this trap yet again and again. And that's where the teaching of Karma Yoga comes in. Uh, this is the first basic teaching of Bhagavad Gita, and primarily this was the uh, teaching intended for Arjuna and people like Arjuna, which are all of us, common people, because we all fall into that trap just like Arjuna fell. And Bhagwan also afterwards explains how he must proceed and uphold dharma as he was meant to do and be detached from the results. As we know, this is enunciated in the Karma Yoga discourse. Yeah, basically, to summarize, Gita provides a wonderful analysis of how action paralysis caused by dharma sankat arises in people in their daily engagement with the world. Also, Bhagavad Gita dissects the anatomy of this dharma sankata and its causal factors and presents to us uh, a threefold solution to overcome the very same problem that was met by Arjuna then and also met by us right now in our lives. Uh, by by this, I think we end this discussion today. Uh, Thank you so much, audience, for
Yes,
coming in.
yes.
Thank you,
So
Nina.
okay. So wait.
Thank you, Dharma.
Wait, so before we wrap it up, I want to say something. Like, first of all, if any of the audience wants this presentation and want to use it or for learning and other purposes, you can mail it to us at navavimarsh@gmail.com. We will send it to you. And the presentation and the stream we are doing mainly came from the motivation by Nitin Sridharji's video in Indica. So let me show you that. Just a minute.
Additionally mention that as sources we for commentaries and also for the original text we have used various sources such as Bhagavad Gita Bhashya by Shankaracharya, the translation. We have used the whole Gita home study course of Swami Dayananda. We have used then the Holy Gita of Swami Chinmayananda, and we for the original verses we have used um, the Gita Super Site of IIT Kanpur.
So as you can see here, this is the video I was referring to. So let me paste the link in the live chat, and you will also get the link in the description and the pinned comment section. Do check it out. This is more detailed, and as Nitin Sridharji is such a great scholar, so you will get to know more things more easily and deeply. Like the analysis here is super. So please do check it out. Wait, let me paste the link for the audience.
Are there any questions?
No, there aren't any
There
questions.
is one. No, no, there is one.
Oh,
There is
there
one.
is one. There is one. Yes. Okay. First, let's take it. This one. So answer Nina and
Then
Rishi.
what does the Gita say about controlling temptation? So it boils on the same 4 points we discussed at the end, right? About self-restraint, about detachment from the fruits of activity. Temptation is basically you can say attachment, right? It is wanting of an object, a wanting of a person, and so on. From that, you must practice self-restraint because temptation is um, is a meaningless end in itself. You must know that end the end goal must be righteous and rightful action according to your swadharma. The temptation itself, it is kind of an interference. So you must practice self-restraint to avoid.
Rishi, do you have anything to share about it?
Yeah. Yeah, so I will just quote the section from which we get this. So basically, Bhagwan refers to this again in the 12th chapter later on. Mm, This is the Bhakti Yoga chapter, and in there, mm, Bhagwan talks about so the problem that we have, right, with our mind constantly being given the fact that Indriya, as is also known from Upanishads and so on, they are outgoing, so they are always outward looking. There is a nice example even given in one of the Upanishads that when a Vatu is studying his scriptures, he hears a sound outside the door and immediately he looks over there. So he's distracted from his main object uh, of concern at that point of time. So this is also again allegorically explained by the example of a ratha and a rathi. So the mind is the rathi or the controller of the indriyas, and the ratha, in fact, is the whole body with the five sense organs. So the teaching is that by concentrating the mind on specific mission alone, either it may be worship of Bhagavan, or either it may be the Karma Yoga example, which is given that a certain action, righteous action, dharmic action, while doing that, be concentrated on that alone. There should be no other distractions whatsoever. Constant practice of that alone shall take you away from temptations. And Bhagwan actually says about this. Quote 12.9 अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोगिन ततो मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय. If, however, you are unable to establish the mind steadily on me, then, O Dhananjaya, seek to attain me through the yoga of practice. So Bhagavan tells us that it is only through abhyas, only through practice, practicing these principles in your daily life again and again. So repeat and doing it again and again and again alone can take away from this uh, vice called temptation, which we fall into also again and again.
Also, this practice isn't mere practice or for like concentrating on God. This practice is also the Bhagwan, like the practices Bhagwan is talking about here, is also the nitya karmas of a dharmic individual that he or she needs to follow. Those are also included in that, like Shanda Vandana, Puja, or whatever the ritual you follow.
Yes, and in general, Samanya Dharma as well.
Yes, yes, of course. So now the next question is, please do a episode in Hindi. Oh, okay. So we will consider it, and I think we will do indeed do a episode in Hindi.
Yeah, it will
What
be
do you
much
say?
more
Do
easier, I
you
think,
think?
for all of us.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I think now we can wrap it up. So again, I will say like watch this video by Srinitin Sridharji, and an amazing piece of work. Mm.
So then let me end uh, this whole podcast of today by quoting a sloka from Bhagavad Gita Falashruti. It is supposed to be said after, at least after reciting some of the verses of Bhagavad Gita. So I'll just quote that. Uh, गीताया श्लोकदशकं सप्तपञ्चचतुष्टयं द्वौ त्रिणेकं तदर्धं वा श्लोकानां यः पठेन्नरः चन्द्रलोकमवाप्नोति वर्षाणामयुतं ध्रुवं Gita Part Samayukto Mrto Manushatam Vrajet. So, thank you so much, audience, and uh, uh, please forgive me, especially for lacking in vocab, because it's a very deep topic and I had to prepare it, and also there were some problems from my side. So, kindly forgive me for any of the discrepancies which have come in. I think, moderator, you can.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Jai Sri Ram, Vande Mataram.